Good evening, night owls, and welcome to Whisper Crowley. Tonight, I will guide you into a world of darkness, hoping to help you relax and unwind. Perhaps some of you will even drift into a haunting yet soothing sleep. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now we begin. Have you ever wondered what lies beneath your feet? The question hung in the air, thick and heavy, as I stood at the entrance of the old university. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the campus. I could feel a chill creeping in, as if the darkness was seeping through the cracks of the brick buildings. It was late fall and the trees swayed gently, their branches whispering secrets. But what lay beneath the surface? My name is Alex, and I was a junior studying archaeology. I had always been intrigued by history, especially the kind that was hidden away, lost to time. This campus had its secrets, stories of ancient rituals, cults, and students who had vanished without a trace. And now I was determined to uncover those secrets. I took a deep breath, glancing at my friends who had joined me on this late-night adventure. Jenna, with her wild curls and adventurous spirit, was practically bouncing with excitement. Mark, more reserved, wore a look of cautious optimism. Together we made a peculiar trio, drawn together by our curiosity. The entrance to the tunnels was nestled behind a crumbling stone wall, hidden from the prying eyes of the campus. As we approached, I noticed the air grew colder. A shiver ran down my spine, but I brushed it off. It's just the night air, I told myself. As I peered into the darkness, I felt a sense of foreboding. The tunnel yawned open, an invitation to the unknown. Are we really doing this? I asked, a hint of doubt creeping into my voice. Of course, Jenna said, her eyes gleaming with mischief. What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words. We flicked on our flashlights, the beams cutting through the inky blackness. The walls were damp and rough, with patches of moss that thrived in the shadows. I could hear the distant sound of dripping water echoing through the tunnel. It was eerie and unsettling, a reminder that we were far from the safety of the world above. As we ventured deeper, the air grew stale, thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something sweet and rotten. My stomach churned. I glanced at Mark, who looked equally uneasy. Do you smell that? He asked, wrinkling his nose. Yeah, I replied, trying to shake off the growing sense of dread. It's probably just the dampness. But the feeling lingered, crawling under my skin. I couldn't shake the impression that we were not alone. The shadows seemed to shift, as if they were alive, watching our every move. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding louder with each step. As we moved further in, the tunnel widened into a small chamber. The walls were adorned with strange symbols and faded writings. I stepped closer, my flashlight illuminating the ancient markings. They were unlike anything I had ever seen, pulsating with an energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. What do you think it means? Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, I admitted, my excitement mixing with unease. But it feels important. Suddenly a loud bang echoed through the tunnel, reverberating off the stone walls. My heart skipped a beat and I whipped around, scanning the darkness behind us. What was that? I breathed, my voice trembling. Probably just a rat, Mark said, trying to sound brave, but I could hear the uncertainty in his tone. But I didn't feel reassured. The tunnel felt alive, each sound amplified in the thick air. I could almost hear whispers, unintelligible but chilling. It was as if the walls themselves were speaking, a warning, perhaps. We pressed on, my mind racing with thoughts of what could be lurking just out of sight. The atmosphere shifted, the familiar became unfamiliar, and the shadows grew longer, twisting into grotesque shapes that danced along the walls. I felt a growing sense of isolation, the walls closing in, and the feeling of being watched intensified. "Let's keep moving," I suggested, forcing my legs to move forward. The air was stifling, and every step felt heavier than the last. My thoughts spiraled, torn between curiosity and terror. Then, just as we turned a corner, the tunnel opened into another room. It was larger, darker. My flashlight beam swept across the space, revealing remnants of something sinister, scattered bones, a rusted dagger, and in the center, a stone altar, slick with something dark and sticky. The sight sent a wave of nausea through me. I stumbled back, nearly colliding with Jenna. "This is wrong. We shouldn't be here," I gasped, a knot of fear tightening in my stomach. But before I could turn back, a chill swept through the room, colder than anything I had felt before. The air thickened and the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest. I could feel the panic rising, clawing at my throat. "Guys, we need to go," I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us, heavy and deliberate. My heart raced as I turned to see a shadow moving in the darkness. It was large, featureless, but the presence it exuded was palpable, a suffocating weight that pressed down on my chest. "What was that?" Jenna cried, her voice breaking. I didn't answer. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the exit, Mark close behind. We ran, the sound of our footsteps mingling with the echo of something pursuing us. The darkness pressed in around us, every corner a potential trap, every shadow a lurking threat. As we bolted through the tunnel, the whispers escalated into a cacophony of frantic voices, screaming in a language I couldn't understand. I felt the walls closing in, a tangible force pulling at us, trying to drag us back into the depths. The tunnel twisted and turned, disorienting me as I searched for the way out. Panic surged through my veins, we were lost. Suddenly we burst into the chamber where we had first entered, but it felt different now, tainted. The air buzzed with energy, and the shadows shifted like they were alive, reaching for us. "Keep running," I yelled, pushing past the altar, desperate to escape. The darkness clawed at my back, a cold breath that sent shivers down my spine. We sprinted toward the exit, the weight of the shadows heavy on our heels. But just as we reached the entrance, a deafening roar erupted behind us. It was a sound unlike anything I had ever heard, a mixture of anger and anguish that reverberated through the walls. I stumbled through the doorway, falling to the ground, gasping for breath. Mark and Jenna followed, their faces pale with fear. "What was that?" Mark panted, his eyes wide with terror. "I don't know," I replied, my voice shaky. "But we need to get out of here." We scrambled to our feet, racing across the campus, the chill of the night air a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness we had just escaped. But as we looked back, the entrance to the tunnel loomed behind us, silent and still, as if nothing had happened. Yet I knew better. Something dark lay beneath the surface, and we had only scratched the edge of its terrifying grip. The university held its secrets tightly, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The shadows would return, and they would not forget us. As we stumbled back into the moonlit courtyard, my heart pounded furiously in my chest, echoing the chaos that had just unfolded in the tunnels. The fresh air felt almost like a betrayal, soothing and cool against my heated skin, yet it couldn't wash away the suffocating terror we had just experienced. I glanced at Jenna and Mark, their faces pale and shaken, reflecting the same confusion and dread that churned in my stomach. "What just happened down there?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling as she hugged herself tightly. Her wild curls, usually so full of life, hung limply around her face, dampened by sweat. "Why, I don't know," I stammered, shaking my head in disbelief. "But we need to tell someone about it." Mark, still catching his breath, looked up at the ancient buildings that loomed around us. The moonlight cast long shadows, making them appear even more imposing. "Who would believe us? We sound insane," he replied, his voice low and laced with fear. "What if they think we're just messing around?" I felt a deep ache in my chest at the thought. I had always wanted to discover the secrets of this campus, but I hadn't signed up for something like this. But we can't just ignore it. There were bones, Mark, and that whatever that was chasing us. We need to find out what it means. We stood in silence for a moment, the enormity of what we had encountered sinking in. The campus felt deceptively quiet now, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "Let's go back to my dorm," Jenna suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can figure this out together." There was a resoluteness in her tone that I admired, despite the quiver beneath it. As we made our way back across the campus, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The shadows danced just beyond the reach of our flashlights, and the whispering winds carried an unsettling chill. I could feel my pulse quicken, each step heavy with an unshakable sense of dread. When we reached Jenna's dorm, we piled inside, the door slamming shut behind us as if it could protect us from what lurked outside. The dim light of her desk lamp felt comforting, wrapping us in a cocoon of familiarity, yet I still felt an invisible weight pressing down on me. We sank onto her bed, the silence in the room punctuated only by the distant sounds of the campus settling for the night. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "We should document everything we saw," I suggested, my voice steadier now. "Maybe we can find information on those symbols or the history of the tunnels." Jenna nodded, her eyes brightening with determination. "That's a good idea. We can use the library archives. There has to be something written about this place." She grabbed her laptop and opened it, the screen casting a soft glow on her face. Mark leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "And what do we say? Hey, we went exploring in the creepy tunnels and saw something that wants to eat us. They'll think we're nuts." I rubbed my temples, trying to shake off the frustration. "We need to be smart about this. We won't mention the incident, at least not yet. Let's just research the tunnels and the history. If we can find something concrete, then maybe we can convince someone to take us seriously." Hours passed as we sifted through pages of digital records, old maps, and forgotten lore. The university had a rich history, filled with strange rituals and eerie occurrences that sent shivers down my spine. I read about students who had vanished, whispers of a secret society that held dark ceremonies beneath the campus. Each story felt like a piece of a puzzle, each revelation leading to more questions than answers. "Look at this," Jenna said suddenly, her eyes wide as she pointed at the screen. "There's a mention of a cult that used to operate on campus, something about summoning spirits and performing sacrifices." The room felt colder, and I pulled my sweater tighter around me. "Sacrifices? What kind of sacrifices?" I asked, my throat dry. "Nothing specific, just vague references," Jenna replied, her fingers scrolling through the text. "But it said they would perform their rituals at specific times. Maybe that's why we heard those whispers when we were down there." I felt a chill race up my spine. And what if those times are tied to the disappearances? I pondered aloud. Mark shifted uncomfortably. "This is getting creepy. What if we're just making things worse by digging into this? We could be stirring up something we shouldn't mess with. Or we could be preventing it from happening again," I countered, the fire of determination igniting in me. "We owe it to those who vanished to uncover the truth. But we have to be careful. Whatever we encountered down there, it was real." Just then the lights flickered, casting the room in brief darkness before illuminating once more. The sudden shift made my heart race, and I exchanged glances with Jenna and Mark. "Did you see that?" Jenna asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a chuckle. "Probably just an electrical issue." But deep down, I knew it felt more than that. The shadows outside seemed to shift, creeping closer as if they were gathering at the edges of our sanctuary. I could almost hear the whispers again, faint but persistent. "We should get some sleep," I suggested, trying to shake off the encroaching dread. "We can continue in the morning." Jenna nodded, but I could see the fear lurking in her eyes. As we settled down for the night, I tried to push the terrifying thoughts aside. I forced myself to believe that once the sun rose, everything would feel less sinister. But sleep did not come easily. The darkness felt thicker than ever, wrapping around me like a shroud. Every creak of the building sent my heart racing, and every shadow that danced on the wall felt alive. At some point during the night, I awoke to the sound of footsteps outside Jenna's door. The rhythmic thudding echoed in the stillness, each step slow and deliberate. My heart raced as I strained to listen, unsure if I was still trapped in a nightmare. "Jenna," I whispered, my voice hoarse. I reached out, shaking her shoulder gently. "Do you hear that?" She stirred, blinking sleep from her eyes. "Hear what?" "Footsteps," I hissed, adrenaline flooding my system. "Someone's out there." Mark was already sitting up, eyes wide with fear. "What the hell is going on?" The footsteps paused, and a heavy silence filled the room. I held my breath, every muscle tense. Then the doorknob rattled slowly, as if someone was testing it, testing our resolve. A chill raced down my spine. I was sure I could feel something sinister lurking just beyond the door, waiting for us to make a mistake. "Stay quiet," I urged, my voice barely a whisper. But as we sat in the dim light, fear and uncertainty coursing through our veins, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there was just as desperate to find us as we were to escape. And at that moment, I realized the true terror of the tunnels had not just been what we had encountered below. It was what was now creeping into our lives, inching closer, ready to claim us. What awaited us beyond that door? The whispers grew louder in my mind, intertwining with my thoughts, wrapping around me like a vice. I knew we had to confront whatever was out there, but a part of me wanted to hide, to let the shadows take me instead. As the doorknob rattled once more, I steeled myself for what lay ahead. We were no longer just students seeking adventure. We were entangled in something dark, something that refused to let us go. The doorknob rattled again, a low, rhythmic sound that sent shivers down my spine. I held my breath, my heart thundering in my ears. The dim light from the lamp flickered, casting erratic shadows across the walls, as if the room itself was caught in a struggle between light and darkness. "Who's there?" I managed to whisper, my voice shaking despite my effort to sound strong. The silence that followed felt heavy, thick with anticipation and dread. I could feel Jenna's and Mark's eyes on me, wide with fear, mirroring my own uncertainty. The rattling stopped, replaced by a soft, almost hesitant knock. It was gentle, as if whoever, or whatever, was outside was unsure of their next move. My mind raced. Was this a prank? Or was it something far more sinister? The stories we had read echoed in my mind, whispering warnings of dark rituals and vengeful spirits. "Maybe it's just the wind," Mark suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. "Well, it could be nothing." "No," I said firmly. "That's not just wind. There's something out there." My voice was stronger now, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. "We can't just sit here." "Should we open the door?" Jenna's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes darting nervously toward the exit. "I don't think we have a choice," I replied, feeling the weight of our situation pressing down on me. I could almost sense the presence on the other side, like a predator lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. "But we need to be ready for anything." I slowly got up from the bed, my legs shaky but resolute. The others followed suit, and we huddled close together, a united front against the unknown. I reached for the door, my hand trembling as I grasped the cold handle. "On three," I said, glancing back at Jenna and Mark, who nodded, their faces pale but determined. "1, 2, 3, I turned the knob and yanked the door open, ready for whatever awaited us. The hallway stretched before us, eerily quiet, the only sound the distant hum of the building's ancient pipes. We peered out, hearts racing, the air thick with tension. I felt exposed, standing in the doorway, but I forced myself to step out into the dimly lit corridor. As we ventured further into the hall, I noticed something strange. The shadows seemed to twist and bend in unnatural ways, as if they were alive, watching us. I could feel a chill crawling along my skin, and my instincts screamed at me to turn back. "Maybe we should go back," Jenna suggested, her voice trembling. "This feels wrong." I shook my head, pushing aside my own fears. "We need to figure out what's going on. We can't let fear control us," but as I said the words, I felt a creeping doubt. The deeper we went, the more it felt like we were stepping into a different world, one that was not ours to understand. We moved cautiously down the hall, the flickering lights overhead casting sporadic bursts of illumination. I could hear my breath echoing back at me, quick and shallow, each step reverberating with an unsettling finality. Suddenly a loud crash echoed from one of the nearby rooms, causing us to jump. I felt my heart race even faster, and I exchanged panicked glances with Mark and Jenna. "What was that?" I whispered, fear clawing at my throat. "Maybe we should check it out," Mark suggested, his voice shaking but laced with a hint of bravado. "Are you crazy?" Jenna shot back, her eyes wide. "What if it's whatever is after us? We can't ignore it," I said, feeling the tension in the air. "If there's someone or something out here, we need to know." Reluctantly, we moved toward the door from which the sound had come. It was slightly ajar, a thin sliver of darkness beckoning us closer. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I pushed forward, curiosity and fear driving me onward. As we peered inside, the scene that greeted us was surreal. The room was in disarray, papers strewn across the floor, old furniture overturned, as if a violent struggle had taken place. The scent of dust and decay filled the air, mingling with something sharper, more metallic. "Look at this," Mark said, kneeling to examine a scrap of paper. "It looks like a ritual diagram." Jenna and I moved closer, peering over his shoulder. The crude sketch depicted strange symbols and figures, each one more unnerving than the last. The center of the drawing was a large circle with a series of lines radiating outward, reminiscent of the very symbols we had seen in the tunnels. "What the hell is this?" Jenna whispered, her voice a mix of awe and terror. "I don't know," I replied, my heart racing. "But it looks like whatever they were doing down there is connected to this." Suddenly the overhead lights flickered violently, and the room plunged into darkness. I felt panic rise within me, a primal fear that threatened to take hold. "We need to get out of here," I shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline. But before we could react, a low growl echoed from the shadows, sending chills racing down my spine. I could barely make out a shape shifting in the dark, its form indistinct yet menacing. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Jenna's arm as I sprinted toward the door. Mark followed closely behind, our footsteps pounding against the floor as we fled the room. I could hear the growling grow louder, a sinister sound that clawed at my mind. We burst into the hallway, panting and desperate, the chill of fear settling in our bones. But as we raced down the corridor, I could feel the presence closing in on us, its malevolence palpable. "Where do we go?" Mark gasped, glancing back at the darkness that seemed to stretch endlessly behind us. "Anywhere but here," I shouted, my heart racing as we turned a corner, desperate for an escape. The shadows seemed to swirl around us, enveloping us in their suffocating embrace. We stumbled into a larger room, its walls lined with shelves filled with old books and artifacts. The air was thick with dust, and the only light came from the flickering bulb overhead. "Look," Jenna pointed to a set of heavy doors on the far side of the room, slightly ajar. "We can get out through there." Without hesitation, we dashed toward the doors, pushing them open with all our strength. The cold night air rushed in, invigorating and terrifying at the same time. But just as we crossed the threshold, a figure emerged from the shadows behind us. It was tall and indistinct, cloaked in darkness, its features obscured. The growl morphed into a guttural roar, echoing off the walls, sending shivers of terror through my entire being. "Go! Now!" I shouted, pushing Jenna and Mark ahead of me as I turned to confront the lurking threat. I could feel the darkness closing in, suffocating and consuming. In that moment, I realized the true horror of our discovery. the secrets hidden beneath the campus were far more dangerous than we could have ever imagined. As we fled into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was chasing us was not just a creature of the dark. It was a manifestation of our own fears, a reminder of the shadows that dwell within us all. We had opened a door to something ancient and malevolent, and now we were trapped in a nightmare that refused to let us go. But I knew one thing for sure: we had to fight. Whatever awaited us was relentless, but we could not become its prey. The struggle was only beginning. The chill of the night air enveloped us as we stumbled into the darkened expanse outside the building. I could hear the frantic pounding of my heart echoing in my ears like a war drum. The shadows of the university loomed ominously, each flickering light casting ghostly figures that danced mockingly around us. I dared not look back. The memory of that growl was enough to keep my adrenaline pumping. "Where do we go?" Jenna gasped, her voice shaky and filled with terror. Her breath misted in the cool air, a tangible sign of our panic. I turned my gaze towards the sprawling campus, searching for any sign of safety. "We need to find a place with people. Somewhere we can lock the doors," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the turmoil raging within me. Mark nodded, his face pale and drawn. "The library should be open. It's usually busy at night, especially with finals coming up." "Then let's move," I urged, pushing us forward. We sprinted across the courtyard, the grass slick beneath our feet, the scent of earth and dampness thick in the air. With each step I felt a sense of urgency, an unshakable need to escape whatever hunted us. The library loomed ahead, a grand structure of stone and glass that seemed to invite us in while also standing as a silent witness to the horrors we had just encountered. As we reached the entrance, I pulled at the heavy glass door, my fingers trembling with anticipation. It swung open with a creak, revealing the warm, inviting glow of lights inside, a stark contrast to the darkness we had fled. We hurried inside, the familiar scent of books wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. The vastness of the library felt like a sanctuary, yet the creeping unease remained, gnawing at the edges of my mind. "Is it safe?" Jenna asked, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting something to materialize from the shadows. "I think so," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Let's find a place to hide." We moved deeper into the library, weaving through the towering shelves of books that seemed to stretch infinitely. I could hear the faint whispers of other students studying in the distance, their voices a reminder that we were not alone. As we turned a corner, we stumbled upon a small study room with a large table at its center. "In here," I urged, pulling the door shut behind us. We quickly piled chairs against it, creating a makeshift barricade. Once secured, I took a deep breath, allowing my racing heart to settle, even if just a little. "What do we do now?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We wait and figure out what to do next," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were merely prolonging the inevitable. Minutes ticked by in a suffocating silence, each second stretching painfully. The distant sound of pages turning in hushed discussions felt oddly comforting, yet the darkness lingered just outside, a reminder of our recent terror. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the main part of the library, making us jump. Jenna's eyes widened in fear. "What was that?" "I don't know," I replied, panic creeping back into my voice. "But it doesn't sound good." We huddled closer together, straining to hear any further sounds. The tension in the air thickened, and I could feel the weight of dread pressing down on us. I thought about the drawing we had seen, the symbols, the growls. Whatever had been down there was now free, and it was searching for us. What if it finds us? Mark's voice trembled as he looked at us, desperation etched on his face. We can't think like that, I said, trying to keep my own fears at bay. We need to focus on finding a way to fight back. The door rattled suddenly, jolting us from our thoughts. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. What if it's here? Jenna whispered, her eyes darting around the room as if seeking an escape. Stay calm, I instructed, my voice steadier than I felt. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to listen. For a moment there was nothing but silence. But then a low, guttural growl resonated through the wood, sending chills down my spine. It's close, I breathed, backing away slowly. We need to be ready. Just then I caught sight of something on the table, a dusty old book, its leather cover cracked and worn. What's this? I asked, flipping it open. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, strange symbols and drawings similar to the ones we had seen earlier. It looked like a journal. Can you read it? Mark asked, peering over my shoulder. I don't know, I replied, scanning the pages. But it might have information about what we're dealing with. As I flipped through the pages, I found references to ancient rituals and symbols meant to protect against dark forces. Oh, this is it. This might help us, I exclaimed, feeling a surge of hope. But before we could discuss further, the door rattled again, this time with greater force. My heart raced as I realized whatever was out there was trying to break in. We need to move now, I urged, grabbing the journal and stuffing it under my arm. We surged toward the back of the room, looking for an escape route. There's a window, Jenna pointed to a large window at the far end, partially hidden by shelves. Let's go, I shouted, racing toward it. We pushed aside the shelves, the sound of their scraping echoing in the small room. As we reached the window, I could see the darkened campus outside, the moonlight spilling onto the grass. It won't hold for long, Mark shouted, glancing nervously at the door, which continued to rattle violently. I quickly pushed up the window, the cool night air rushing in. Help me, I grunted as I climbed onto the sill. Jenna and Mark scrambled up after me, urgency fueling our movements. Just as I pulled my legs through, I heard a loud crash from the door, wood splintering as something forced its way in. Hurry, I yelled, my heart racing. Jenna slipped through, followed closely by Mark. We dropped down onto the grass outside, landing in a soft thud. Run, I shouted, not daring to look back. The sound of splintering wood and a deep, primal growl echoed behind us, a terrifying reminder of the darkness we had unleashed. We sprinted across the lawn, my legs pumping as adrenaline surged through me. I could hear the heavy footfalls behind us, could sense the malevolence chasing us. The night was alive with fear, and I knew we couldn't stop until we found a place to regroup, to plan our next move. But as we dashed toward the main road, a thought struck me. Whatever we had awakened wasn't just a creature. It was a manifestation of our fears, something that thrived in the darkness of our minds. And if we didn't confront it, we would never escape its grip. We needed answers. We needed to understand what had happened in those tunnels and how to fight back against the shadows that threatened to consume us. Where now? Jenna gasped, glancing back at the library. Anywhere but here, I yelled, the urgency in my voice igniting a fire within me. We had to keep moving. We had to find a way to face our fears head-on, or we would be trapped in this nightmare forever. As we raced down the path, the darkness loomed behind us, but I felt a flicker of determination ignite within. We were not going to let the shadows win. Not now, not ever. We sprinted down the narrow path, the moonlight casting eerie shadows that danced alongside us. My heart pounded in rhythm with my footfalls, a frantic echo of the fear thrumming through my veins. Each breath was a battle against the cold air, sharp and stinging, yet it fueled my determination to survive. "Where are we going?" Jenna shouted, glancing back at the library. The ominous darkness seemed to pulse, as if it were alive, lurking just beyond the reach of the moonlight. "I don't know," I yelled, pushing myself to run faster. "We need to find someone. A professor, a security guard, anyone." The campus was unusually quiet, the typical hustle of students gone. It was as if we had entered a different realm, one where the world was suspended in fear. I could almost hear the whispers of the shadows, taunting us with secrets we weren't ready to uncover. As we rounded a corner, we stumbled upon a small parking lot, its lights flickering weakly. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign of life. There, Mark pointed toward a dimly lit building at the edge of the lot. "The student center should have someone." We dashed toward it, desperation propelling us forward. The closer we got, the more I felt the oppressive weight of the darkness pressing down on us, like a suffocating blanket. It was as if the very shadows were reaching out, trying to grasp us. Once we reached the building, I pulled at the door, praying it would yield to us. It swung open with a creak, revealing a sparsely lit lobby filled with couches and coffee tables. A few students were huddled together, their faces pale and drawn, eyes wide with fear. "What's going on?" one of them whispered, a girl clutching a coffee cup as if it were a lifeline. "Have you seen anything strange?" "Any noises?" I asked, my voice a mix of urgency and disbelief. "They said something been happening near the tunnels," another student replied, his voice trembling. "Some kind of creature, people are disappearing." A chill ran down my spine. "We were in the tunnels," I confessed. "We saw something." The group fell silent, their expressions shifting from curiosity to horror. "You need to get out of here," the girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They say it comes at night, it hunts." "Where can we go?" Jenna's voice was filled with panic. "Try the main building," the boy said. "There's a security desk there. Maybe they can help." We didn't waste another moment. I could feel the shadows creeping closer, their presence a constant reminder that time was running out. "Let's go," I urged, leading the way back into the night. As we raced across the campus, the atmosphere shifted. The once familiar surroundings began to morph into a twisted version of reality. The trees seemed to bend in unnatural angles, and the shadows elongated as if they were reaching for us. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching our every move. "We can't just keep running," Mark panted, glancing over his shoulder. "We need a plan." I nodded, the urgency of our situation sinking in. "We need to find out what we're up against. That journal, it might have answers." "We should go back," Jenna exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. What if it's still there? No, I said firmly. We need to confront this head on. We can't let fear dictate our choices. The main building came into view, its facade looming in the darkness. We reached the entrance, my heart racing as I pulled the heavy door open. The security desk was dimly lit, and the room appeared empty. I felt a pang of disappointment, but we had to keep searching. "Hello," I called, my voice echoing through the hall. "Is anyone here?" A moment later, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a security guard, his uniform wrinkled and his face weary. "What are you kids doing here this late?" he asked, his voice gruff. "We need help," I said, urgency bleeding into my tone. "There's something in the tunnels, something dangerous." He raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident on his face. "You kids think you've seen monsters. This campus is full of rumors." "No, this is real," I insisted, the memories of the growls and shadows flooding back. "We need to warn everyone." The guard's expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing his features. "All right, let's see what we can do." He led us to a back room filled with monitors displaying various areas of the campus. I could see the grainy images of empty hallways and dimly lit paths. The guard started flipping switches, and the static on the screens filled the air. "Is anyone out there?" he asked, his voice now tinged with urgency. As he spoke, my gaze was drawn to one of the monitors. A figure was moving through the shadows, barely visible but unmistakably there. My heart dropped. "What is that?" I whispered, pointing at the screen. The guard squinted at the monitor, his brow furrowing. "It shouldn't be out there," he muttered. "Not at this hour." Panic surged through me. "We need to warn the others. It's hunting." Just then the lights flickered and the monitors went dark. The oppressive silence swallowed the room, and I could feel the temperature drop. "It's here," I said, dread pooling in my stomach. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the front of the building. The guard grabbed his radio, shouting into it, but the static drowned him out. "We need to get out," he yelled, urgency clear in his voice. I turned to Jenna and Mark, my heart racing. "We can't stay here." We pushed through the door just as another crash reverberated through the building, the shadows coiling around us like a living entity. Outside, the chaos erupted. Students were screaming, rushing in every direction, the air thick with panic. I could hear the growls echoing from the darkness, and my skin prickled with fear. "Where do we go?" Mark shouted over the chaos, his eyes wide with terror. "Anywhere but here," I yelled, my heart pounding in my chest. We darted toward a nearby building, desperate to find shelter. The darkness was closing in, the shadows dancing maliciously at the edges of our vision. As we burst into the safety of the building, I felt a flicker of hope. But the feeling was short-lived as the growls grew louder, echoing ominously in the night. Whatever we had awakened was no longer lurking in the shadows. It was hunting us, and we had to confront our fears if we wanted to survive this nightmare. "Stay together," I shouted, grabbing their hands. "We need to find a way to fight back." With determination burning in my chest, I pushed forward, ready to face the darkness that threatened to consume us. The answers lay ahead, and I was willing to risk everything to uncover the truth behind the horrors we had awakened. I hope you enjoyed the first story. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, but if I didn't do my job well, feel free to give it a thumbs down. Either way, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's continue. Have you ever wondered what lies beneath us? It was a simple question, but it hung in the air like a thick fog, capturing the attention of everyone around the campfire. My friends and I sat on the edge of the university's campus, the dim glow of the flames illuminating our faces. The trees loomed tall around us, their silhouettes like silent sentinels keeping watch over our little gathering. The night was still, but an uneasy tension crackled in the air, almost as if the forest itself was listening. I leaned forward, drawing in the warmth of the fire. What if there's more to the campus than we know? What if those old tunnels under the library aren't just storage? Jenna, always the skeptic, rolled her eyes. You mean the legends about the cults and rituals? Come on, Max. Those are just stories to scare freshmen. But there was something in her voice, a flicker of uncertainty that told me she was more intrigued than she let on. The legends had circulated among students for years, whispers about ancient rites and a secret society hidden beneath the university's hallowed halls. It was enough to send shivers down my spine. Let's explore them, I suggested, a sudden rush of adrenaline coursing through me. It would be like a real-life adventure. Just us, the tunnels, and whatever mysteries they hold. The others exchanged glances. Are you serious? Said Tom, a mischievous grin creeping across his face. You want to break into a dark, creepy tunnel in the middle of the night? Sounds fun. Count me in, Jenna said reluctantly, but I could see the spark of curiosity ignite in her eyes. That night we gathered our gear, flashlights, a couple of snacks, and a thick rope just in case. I could feel the excitement building, a thrill that danced along my nerves as we made our way toward the old library. The campus was quiet, the moonlight spilling over the paths like a soft blanket. As we approached the entrance to the tunnels, an unsettling feeling settled in my stomach. The air grew colder, and a faint smell of damp earth filled my lungs. It was as if the darkness itself was breathing around us, watching. Are we sure we want to do this? Jenna's voice quivered slightly. Yeah, it'll be fine, I reassured her, though my own heart raced. Just a quick look around. What could possibly go wrong? With that, we descended into the tunnels. The dampness clung to the walls, and our flashlights flickered against the rough stone, revealing ancient carvings that snaked along the sides. Each symbol seemed to pulse with a history of its own, whispering secrets from long ago. As we ventured deeper, the air thickened. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, soft rustling, like something was shifting just out of sight. Did you hear that? Tom whispered, his voice barely above a breath. It's just the wind, I said, but my confidence wavered. My skin prickled as I caught a glimpse of shadows darting at the edges of our lights. Hours seemed to pass as we explored, our initial excitement waning with each passing moment. The further we went, the more the tunnels transformed. What had started as a simple exploration became a descent into unease. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I could sense something lurking just beyond our sight. Then a noise. A low, rumbling growl reverberated through the passage. My heart leaped into my throat. What was that? I hissed, my voice trembling. I don't know, Jenna replied, fear etched on her face. Maybe we should go back. But before I could respond, Tom's flashlight flickered and died. Great, he muttered, fumbling for his spare. The darkness rushed in, swallowing us whole. Just stay close, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But my mind raced. What could be lurking in the dark? We retraced our steps, the sense of safety we had felt earlier now replaced with dread. The growl echoed again, closer this time, sending chills down my spine. I could almost feel the heat of breath on my neck. Let's hurry, I urged, my instincts screaming at me to run. Suddenly Tom stopped, his expression frozen in shock. Guys, look, he pointed down a side passage where an unusual pattern marred the floor, a series of deep, dark tracks leading into the shadows. Those don't look like animal tracks, Jenna whispered, her eyes wide with fear. They're too large and too wrong. The air felt electric, charged with a primal fear. We need to go. Now, I shouted, turning to flee. As we bolted back, the growling intensified, reverberating through the stone like a dark melody. Panic surged through me, and my heart pounded louder than the chaos around us. Run, I screamed, my legs pumping hard against the ground. I could hear footsteps behind us, heavy and deliberate, closing the distance. Just when I thought we had made it, Tom tripped, falling to the ground. Help, he cried, panic rising in his voice. Leave him, Jenna shouted, but I felt a surge of desperation. Grab my hand, I reached back, pulling him to his feet, but the growling had morphed into a terrifying roar, sending vibrations through the ground. We sprinted toward the entrance, the light from the outside beckoning us like a distant star. With every step, the shadows behind us surged forward, hungry and relentless. Bursting through the exit, we stumbled into the moonlight, panting and disoriented. We didn't stop running until we reached the edge of the forest, gasping for breath, the echo of the growl still ringing in our ears. But as we turned to catch our breath, we noticed something that froze the blood in our veins. Tom was gone. Panic twisted in my chest. Where, Tom? He was right behind us, Jenna shouted, her eyes wide with terror. We called for him, our voices trembling in the silence, but there was no answer. The darkness swallowed any sound. We can't leave him, I said, desperation rising in my throat. But as we stepped back toward the tunnel, a low growl echoed from within. It was clear. Whatever had taken Tom was waiting. And we had no idea what it truly was. Panic gripped me as I stood at the entrance of the tunnel, staring into the suffocating blackness. The faint outline of the tunnel mouth felt like a gaping maw, eager to consume any last remnants of light. Jenna was beside me, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. We were supposed to be a team, a group of friends exploring the unknown, but now we were teetering on the edge of a nightmare. Tom, I shouted again, my voice cracking in the stillness. It echoed back, mocking me. The only response was the soft rustle of the wind, whispering through the trees above us. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, a frantic drumbeat that matched the fear racing through my veins. He can't just disappear, Jenna exclaimed, clutching my arm as if it were a lifeline. He was right behind us. I glanced back into the tunnel, the darkness seeming to pulse and sway, almost alive. What had we awakened down there? The legends swirled in my mind like a storm. Were the stories of cults and ancient rites true? Had we stumbled into something far beyond our understanding? We have to go back, I said, more to convince myself than her. We can't leave him. Jenna shook her head violently. Max, that thing, whatever it is, could be waiting. We might not make it back out. But we can't just abandon him, I countered, my voice rising in desperation. The fear in her eyes mirrored my own, and I could feel the weight of indecision pressing down on me. Then let's at least make a plan, Jenna said, taking a deep breath. We need to know what we're up against. Maybe there's something in the tunnels that can help us. Her logic broke through my haze of fear. I nodded slowly, the flicker of hope igniting a small flame in my chest. Okay, let's grab some supplies and return. But we have to be smart about this. As we headed back to campus, the moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow on the path. Each rustle of leaves or snap of a twig sent jolts of anxiety through me. I was acutely aware of every shadow and movement, my senses heightened as if the forest itself were aware of our presence. We gathered our backpacks, grabbing more flashlights, ropes, and some snacks, anything that might be useful. My hands trembled slightly as I packed, each item feeling like a talisman against the unknown. I glanced at Jenna, who was pacing the floor, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Do you really think he's still alive?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have to believe he is," I replied, the words tasting bitter. "If we don't think that way, then what's the point?" With resolve, we set off once more toward the library. As we approached the tunnel entrance, the atmosphere felt thicker, the air laden with an ominous silence that hung heavy like a shroud. I turned my flashlight on, the beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating the stone walls once more. "Stick close," I warned as we entered the tunnels. The dampness wrapped around us, and the chill seemed to seep into my bones. We moved cautiously, every sound magnified in the stillness. The shadows danced along the walls, each flicker of our flashlights revealing the intricate carvings, stories from a time long forgotten. "We need to find where we lost Tom," I said, my voice echoing slightly. "He must have gone this way." As we pressed deeper, I could feel the oppressive darkness closing in around us. The growls from before still reverberated in my mind, a sinister reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond our sight. I focused on the path ahead, but the shadows seemed to shift and morph, making me doubt my senses. "Max, over here," Jenna called, her voice cutting through my reverie. I turned to see her shining her flashlight on the ground, where the unusual tracks had been deep, claw-like impressions leading further down the corridor. "This way," I urged, following the trail. With each step, the air thickened, the feeling of being watched pressing against my skin. As we rounded a corner, a low hum vibrated through the walls, a sound unlike anything I had ever heard. It was rhythmic, almost like a chant, echoing off the stone. My heart raced. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, dread creeping into my voice. "Yeah," Jenna replied, her eyes wide with fear. "It sounds like chanting." We exchanged a terrified glance. The legend spoke of rituals, ancient practices meant to summon dark forces. Were we really stepping into the remnants of something that should have been left alone? "Let's keep moving," I said, steeling myself against the rising tide of fear. "We have to find Tom." As we followed the tracks deeper, the chanting grew louder, reverberating through the air like a sinister lullaby. The walls began to close in, and I felt a sense of claustrophobia creeping up on me. The tunnel shifted from stone to earthen walls, damp and sticky with moisture, like the ground itself was alive. "Max, look," Jenna pointed to the walls, where old symbols were etched deep into the earth, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. They pulsated rhythmically, in sync with the chanting. "What are they?" I murmured, stepping closer. "I think they're part of the rituals," she replied, her voice trembling. "We need to be careful. This might be a trap." Suddenly the chanting stopped. Silence enveloped us, suffocating and complete. My heart raced, every instinct screaming for us to turn back. "Let's get out of here," I said, but as we turned we heard it, a low, guttural growl rising from the darkness behind us. Before we could react, something moved in the shadows, a massive shape slithering into the light. My blood turned to ice as I caught a glimpse of it, a creature with elongated limbs, skin glistening with a viscous sheen, eyes glowing like coals in the dark. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline fueling my movements. We dashed back down the tunnel, the sound of the creature's footsteps pounding behind us, echoing like thunder. "Max, it's gaining on us," Jenna cried, her breath coming in gasps. The tunnel twisted and turned, a labyrinth that seemed to conspire against us. I could hear the creature growling, its breath hot on my neck. My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out. "We need to find an exit," I yelled, trying to keep my voice steady. "Over there," Jenna pointed to a faint light in the distance. We sprinted toward it, hope igniting in my chest. As we reached the light, I threw myself through the opening, landing hard on the cold ground outside. I looked back, expecting to see Jenna right behind me. But she was gone. The darkness swallowed her, and I was left alone, gasping for breath, the weight of terror pressing down on me. I had to go back. I had to save her. But as I turned toward the tunnel, a deep, chilling growl reverberated from within, echoing the fear that clawed at my heart. I was no longer just searching for Tom. I was now fighting to save us all from the depths of whatever darkness lay beneath the university. Panic coursed through me as I stumbled back toward the entrance of the tunnel. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears like a warning drum. Jenna's absence was a void that threatened to swallow me whole. I couldn't believe she was gone, vanished into the darkness I had foolishly dared to confront. "Jenna," I shouted again, my voice cracking under the weight of dread. The only response was silence, thick and oppressive. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down, urging me to turn back, to flee while I still could. But I couldn't leave her behind. I hesitated for a moment, torn between the instinct to escape and the desperate need to find her. I could feel the cold sweat trickling down my spine as I peered back into the maw of the tunnel. The flickering shadows seemed to twist and warp as if they were alive, eager to pull me in. Taking a deep breath, I stepped back into the darkness, the faint glow of my flashlight barely cutting through the oppressive gloom. The air grew colder, each breath I took feeling like ice in my lungs. I moved slowly, scanning the walls for any sign of Jenna, every sound magnified in the stillness. "Please just show yourself," I pleaded, half expecting a reply, half terrified by the possibility. As I advanced deeper into the tunnel, the symbols on the walls glowed faintly, pulsating like a heartbeat. I reached out, tracing the carvings with my fingertips. Each symbol felt alive, resonating with a hidden energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. It was as if the tunnel itself was breathing, alive with the weight of forgotten rituals and dark histories. A sudden, sharp noise broke the silence, like the sound of a stone scraping against stone. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The sound came again, more insistent, like something or someone was moving just out of sight. "Jenna," I called, my voice trembling. The darkness seemed to answer with a low growl, the sound crawling along my spine. I pressed on, the flashlight beam dancing over the walls. The passage twisted and turned, each corner revealing more of those ancient symbols. My mind raced back to the stories we had heard, tales of students who had disappeared in these tunnels, of rituals that had gone awry. Was I walking into the remnants of a cult? I needed to find Jenna. I couldn't let the shadows claim her too. As I turned another corner, I spotted a glimmer of movement ahead. My heart soared with hope. "Jenna," I shouted, rushing forward. But as I drew closer, the figure morphed into something monstrous. It was hunched and gaunt, its skin stretched tight over bones that jutted out like blades. The creature turned its head, revealing a face that was a grotesque mockery of humanity, with hollow eyes that seemed to drink in the light. My heart plummeted. This was not Jenna, this was something else, something that belonged to the darkness. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran, the sound of the creature's growl echoing behind me, a relentless predator closing in. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, the glow of my flashlight flickering as panic surged through me. "Max, help," the voice was faint, but it cut through the chaos. It was Jenna. I skidded to a halt, retracing my steps. "Jenna," I called, desperation clawing at my throat. "Where are you?" "I'm here." Over here, her voice was frantic, but it felt distant, swallowed by the darkness. I followed the sound, my heart pounding against my ribs like a caged animal. As I rounded a corner, I saw her, huddled against the wall, her eyes wide with fear. Relief flooded through me, but it was quickly replaced by horror as I noticed what she was crouching beside. An altar of sorts, crafted from stone, covered in strange symbols. Dark stains marred its surface, as if something had been sacrificed there. "Max, we need to get out," she cried, her voice trembling. "It's coming. I can feel it." Without thinking, I rushed to her side, grabbing her arm and pulling her to her feet. "We have to go now," I said, urgency fueling my movements. But as we turned to leave, the growling intensified, reverberating through the tunnel walls like a death knell. The creature loomed just behind us, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. I felt a surge of panic as we sprinted down the corridor, the sound of claws scraping against stone chasing us. I glanced back, seeing the creature gaining ground, its elongated limbs propelling it forward with terrifying speed. "Faster," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. We rounded a bend, the flickering beam of our flashlights illuminating the chaotic dance of shadows. "Where do we go?" Jenna gasped, glancing around frantically. "Just keep running," I urged, my own breath coming in ragged gasps. "We have to find an exit." The tunnel twisted in on itself, each turn feeling like a descent deeper into hell. As we ran, I caught sight of more symbols etched into the walls, their glow now pulsing faster, almost as if they were reacting to our fear. We pushed on, desperate to escape, but the growls behind us echoed louder, filling the tunnel with a primal terror that clawed at my sanity. "Max, it's right behind us," Jenna cried, and I could feel the heat of her breath on my neck, her fear merging with my own. We burst into a larger chamber, the ceiling soaring high above us. The air was thick and stale, and the flickering light revealed a grotesque sight. Stone statues adorned with the same symbols, frozen in agonized expressions. "Where are we?" Jenna whispered, her voice barely audible. "Some kind of ritual chamber," I said, scanning the room. "We need to find a way out." But just then, the growling reached a deafening crescendo. The creature surged into the chamber, its eyes blazing with rage. "Run!" I shouted, and we darted toward an archway on the far side of the chamber. The creature lunged at us, its claws swiping through the air with a terrifying speed. I felt the wind of its movement brush past me as we barely dodged its grasp. "Go, go, go," I urged, fear propelling us forward. We stumbled through the archway and into another corridor, but this one felt different. The walls were smooth, devoid of the chaotic symbols. My flashlight beam illuminated a faint glimmer at the end of the passage, a way out perhaps. "Max, keep moving," Jenna yelled, her voice echoing through the tunnel as we sprinted toward the light. Just as we reached the opening, the creature's roar erupted behind us, a sound that sent chills down my spine. We dashed through the exit, tumbling into the cool night air, gasping for breath as we hit the ground outside. But the danger was not over. The creature was close behind, its growls resonating from the tunnel's mouth. I scrambled to my feet, pulling Jenna with me. "Run!" I shouted again, and we sprinted into the trees, the moonlight illuminating our path. The darkness of the forest loomed around us, but I felt the weight of the creature behind us, a relentless shadow that refused to relent. As we ran, my mind raced with the implications of what we had just witnessed. What had we uncovered? And more importantly, what had we unleashed? Each step felt like a battle against the terror that gripped my heart, a reminder that the darkness was still out there, lurking just beyond the light. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning of our nightmare. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silver glow on the forest floor as Jenna and I ran. My lungs burned, each breath a desperate gasp for air. The sounds of the night were drowned out by the thunderous beat of my heart, and behind us the growls echoed like a death knell, a reminder that we were not free yet. "Max, where do we go?" Jenna's voice trembled, tinged with a mix of fear and exhaustion. Her grip on my hand was tight, almost desperate, and I could feel her pulse racing in time with my own. "Keep moving," I urged, glancing back. The darkness of the tunnel loomed like a hungry maw, but we had to push deeper into the forest, away from that hellish place. The trees stretched tall and imposing, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the night sky. As we navigated the underbrush, the shadows danced around us, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. My mind raced, flooded with thoughts of the creature, its grotesque form, the way it had lunged at us with such ferocity. What was it? What did it want? We stumbled over roots and fallen branches, our footing uncertain. "Max!" Jenna cried as she nearly fell. I pulled her back just in time, my heart pounding with the fear of losing her again. "We can't keep running like this. We need a plan." I paused, trying to catch my breath. The woods felt alive, every rustle sending chills down my spine. We need to find somewhere safe, somewhere we can catch our breath and think. I scanned the area, looking for anything that might provide shelter. Over there, Jenna pointed to a cluster of thick bushes, partially hiding a shallow depression in the ground. Without hesitation, we scrambled over to it, ducking low and pressing ourselves into the earth. I could hear the frantic sound of my heartbeat in my ears, but it was now mixed with the sound of Jenna's quick breaths beside me. We crouched in the darkness, our bodies pressed close, trying to blend into the shadows. The growling was distant now, but I knew it wouldn't be long before it found us. "What do you think that thing was?" Jenna whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know," I admitted, my mind racing. But it felt unnatural. Like it was part of something bigger, something we shouldn't have disturbed. The thought of the altar, the strange symbols, sent a shiver through me. Had we awoken something that should have remained buried? "We should have never come here," Jenna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We should have just stayed on campus, studying for finals." "Yeah, well, hindsight's 20/20, I replied, trying to keep my tone light despite the fear clawing at my insides. "Right now, we need to focus on getting out of this mess." A sound broke through the stillness, a twig snapping, the crunch of leaves. My heart raced. Had the creature found us? "Stay quiet," I urged, pressing my finger to my lips. We held our breath, listening intently. The forest seemed to hold its breath too, the usual sounds of night gone. Then through the rustling of the leaves I heard it, a low growl, more of a snarl now, creeping closer. The weight of dread settled heavily on my chest. Suddenly a shadow flitted across the moonlight, moving swiftly and silently. My heart raced. "It's here," I hissed, gripping Jenna's arm tighter. We pressed deeper into the depression, hoping it would hide us from the creature's sight. I could feel the ground beneath us tremble slightly as it moved closer, its growls now low and menacing, vibrating through the earth. "Max, what do we do?" Jenna's eyes were wide with terror, reflecting the faint moonlight. "Wait," I replied, my mind racing. I could feel the panic rising, but I forced myself to remain calm. We had to think clearly. The creature was close, but we couldn't let it know we were here. I held my breath, straining to hear. The growling had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. I could feel my heart pounding, echoing in the stillness. Had it moved on? Then, without warning, the creature let out a roar that echoed through the trees, shattering the silence like glass. It was close, too close. "Run!" I shouted suddenly, adrenaline surging through me. We scrambled out of our hiding place, legs pumping as we dashed away from the sound. The forest was a blur around us, branches reaching out like clawing fingers. We ran blindly, weaving between trees, my mind racing for a plan, a place to hide. I could hear the creature behind us, its growls now mixed with the sound of snapping branches as it pursued us through the underbrush. "Max, I can't keep this up," Jenna gasped beside me, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. "Just a little further," I urged, pushing us onward. In the distance, I spotted a dilapidated cabin, half hidden by overgrown vines. It was our only hope. "Over there," I shouted, pointing as we veered toward the cabin, its outline growing closer. The door hung ajar, creaking softly in the night air. "Is it safe?" Jenna asked, glancing back nervously. "I don't know, but we have to try," I replied, lunging for the door. We burst inside, slamming the door shut behind us. I leaned against it, panting, the darkness wrapping around us like a shroud. "Do you think it saw us?" Jenna whispered, her voice trembling as she leaned against the wall, her eyes darting around the dimly lit interior. "I hope not," I replied, scanning the room. The cabin was old, dust motes dancing in the weak light that filtered through the broken windows. The floorboards creaked beneath our weight, and I could see remnants of old furniture, a table, a few chairs, all covered in a thick layer of dust. But as I took in my surroundings, something caught my eye. On the walls hung tattered photographs, faded and peeling. I stepped closer, studying them. Each one depicted a group of people, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, standing in front of the cabin. But what sent chills down my spine were the symbols that adorned their clothing, similar to those in the tunnel. "Max, what is this place?" Jenna asked, her voice quavering. "I think it's some sort of hideout or meeting place," I said slowly, my mind racing. "These people, they're connected to whatever we found in the tunnels. They were involved in something dark." Just then, a loud thud echoed from outside the cabin, making us jump. The door rattled as something slammed against it. "It found us," Jenna gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to barricade the door," I shouted, rushing to the nearest piece of furniture, a worn-out table. I pushed it against the door, the wood scraping against the floor as I worked to secure it. Jenna joined me, her hands shaking as she helped me shove another chair against the door. "What if it breaks through?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "Then we'll have to fight," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The sound of claws scraping against the wood sent shivers through me, but I knew we couldn't let fear take over. The growling intensified, reverberating through the walls. I could feel the creature's anger radiating from the door, its rage palpable. "Max, what if we don't make it?" Jenna whispered, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I turned to her, forcing a reassuring smile. "We will make it. We're going to get out of here, I promise." But even as I said the words, I felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. As we stood there, adrenaline pumping through our veins, I knew we had to be ready for whatever was about to happen. The creature was relentless, and if we didn't figure out a way to escape, we would become its prey. And deep down I could feel it, the encroaching darkness, the shadows that whispered of ancient rituals and the horrors that lay just beyond the door. The fight for our lives was far from over, and the secrets of the tunnels still loomed large in the shadows of the night. The door shuddered violently as the creature slammed against it again, sending tremors through the cabin. I pressed my back against the table, my heart racing as I glanced at Jenna, whose face was a mask of terror and determination. The wooden barricade creaked ominously, but it held for now. "What do we do if it breaks through?" Jenna whispered, her voice trembling as she peered anxiously at the door. The growling had morphed into a low, rumbling snarl, the sound vibrating through the floorboards beneath our feet. "Stay calm. We need to find a weapon or something we can use to defend ourselves," I said, forcing my voice to steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. I glanced around the dim room, searching for anything that could help us. Old crates sat in the corners, and in the faint light, I could see some rusted tools hanging on the wall. My eyes landed on a heavy iron rod, half buried under dust on a shelf. I dashed over, grabbing it and feeling its weight in my hands, a comforting reassurance, a small measure of power against the encroaching dread. Here, I said, handing it to Jana. Well, you take this. I'll find something else. She nodded, her grip tightening around the rod as if it were a lifeline. I rummaged through the crates, heart pounding as the growling intensified outside. Each sound made me flinch, but I had to stay focused. I needed to find something that could protect us. In one crate, I found a small hunting knife, its blade rusted but still sharp enough to do some damage. I slid it into my belt, feeling slightly more secure, though the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on my shoulders. Max, Jenna's voice cut through my thoughts, laced with fear. What if it gets in here? We'll fight it. We have to, I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. We need to find a way to escape once it's in. I returned to her side, feeling the air thicken with tension. The growling had shifted, becoming a series of frenzied howls, as if the creature was communicating with something or someone outside. Do you hear that? I asked, my eyes widening. The sound was different now, an eerie echo that reverberated through the cabin. Yes, Jenna replied, her voice barely above a whisper. What is it? I don't know, but it doesn't sound like it's alone, I said, trying to suppress the rising panic in my chest. We need to get out of here before whatever that is comes for us. Suddenly, the door splintered, a loud crack echoing as the creature forced its way against the barricade. Jenna jumped, her eyes darting to the door as the sound reverberated through the cabin. Now, I shouted, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the back window, which was partially boarded up but still had a gap we might be able to squeeze through. Help me with this. Together we pushed against the boards, the wood creaking in protest. The howling outside grew louder, a chorus of monstrous voices merging into one terrifying roar. I could feel the floor tremble beneath us, as if the cabin itself was responding to the danger. With a final shove, the boards gave way, and I ducked my head out of the window, scanning the darkened landscape. It's clear, I yelled, adrenaline surging as I helped Jenna through the opening. We landed on the ground with a soft thud, the cool earth beneath us grounding me in reality. But we didn't have time to catch our breath. The howls were closing in, echoing through the trees, and I knew we had to move. Where do we go? Jenna gasped, her eyes wide as she looked back at the cabin. Follow me, I urged, taking her hand and leading her away from the growing chaos. The forest was alive with sounds, rustling leaves, distant howls, and the thudding of our feet on the soft ground. We ran deeper into the woods, the trees towering around us, a labyrinth of shadows and moonlight. My mind raced, trying to piece together our next move. Max, do you think we'll find help? Jenna asked, her breath hitching as we ducked under low branches. I don't know, I admitted, scanning the darkness. But we need to find a road or some sign of civilization. The campus can't be far from here. As we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The air felt thick, charged with something I couldn't quite identify. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the creature lurking in the shadows, but there was nothing, only the darkness stretching behind us like a hungry void. Suddenly we burst into a small clearing, the moonlight flooding the area and illuminating the ground. My heart sank as I took in the sight before us. In the center of the clearing lay an altar, much like the one we had encountered in the tunnels. It was carved from stone, covered in strange symbols, and surrounded by what appeared to be remnants of offerings, animal bones, old candles, and dried herbs. What is this place? Jenna breathed, taking a cautious step forward. I think it's part of whatever cult was in the tunnels, I replied, dread pooling in my stomach. They must have used this clearing for their rituals. Jenna shuddered, glancing around nervously. Do you think they're still here? Before I could answer, the howls returned, louder than before, reverberating through the trees and causing the ground to vibrate beneath our feet. My heart raced as I realized the truth. This was their domain, and we had stumbled into the heart of their darkness. Max, we have to go, Jenna urged, her eyes wide with fear. Wait, I said, an idea sparking in my mind. If we're going to survive this, we need to confront whatever is out there. We have to understand what we're dealing with. Are you crazy? Jenna exclaimed, her voice rising. You want to face them. I don't want to, but we can't run forever, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We need to know if they're the ones behind the creature. Maybe if we can reason with them. A sudden rustle in the trees cut me off, and I turned to see shadows moving at the edge of the clearing. We're not alone, I whispered, adrenaline flooding my veins as I gripped the iron rod tightly. The shadows coalesced into figures, their faces obscured by hoods, and I felt a surge of fear wash over me. Jenna, get ready, I whispered, preparing for whatever was about to happen. As the figures stepped into the moonlight, I caught my breath. They were not just men, they were adorned with the same symbols we had seen in the tunnels, and their eyes glinted with an eerie light. Leave this place, one of them said, their voice low and commanding. You have disturbed what should remain undisturbed. My heart raced as I exchanged a glance with Jenna. We won't leave until we understand what you want, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure took a step forward, raising a hand as if to ward us off. You have been warned. The forest holds secrets that are not meant for your kind. The secrets, I pressed, my heart pounding. Is that why the creature is hunting us? Are you controlling it? A dark chuckle rippled through the group, sending a chill down my spine. You are not as clever as you think. The creature is but a manifestation of the forest's will. It exists to protect the sanctity of our rituals. Jenna's grip on the iron rod tightened as she glanced nervously at me. What do we do, Max? We need to buy some time, I whispered back. I have an idea. As the figures advanced, I raised the iron rod defiantly. We won't back down. If you want us gone, you'll have to fight for it. Laughter echoed through the clearing, the figures exchanging glances. You think you can challenge us. You know nothing of the darkness you face. Maybe not, I shot back, but we won't let you take us without a fight. With a sudden surge of energy, I charged forward, the iron rod raised high. Jenna followed suit, her determination igniting my own as we prepared to confront the ancient cult and whatever horrors lay beyond the darkness. In that moment, I felt a shift in the air, the weight of destiny bearing down upon us. We were about to uncover the truth behind the forest's secrets, and it was a truth that would change everything. You made it to the end of the stories. That means it's the perfect time to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you haven't already, leave a like and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great time relaxing, and good night.